This, the only way I can think of it is if we shoot straight up into space in the Earth's rotation, the Earth rotates and then we come back down. Is that how we do it?
Well, the Earth's rotation does play a part in how much time it takes, but think of it like a fish in the water. Okay, if you're a fish swimming in the ocean, you can go a certain velocity, and that's your life. That's all you know. But if you could elevate into the air and go, you would be like, this is impossible. How quickly I can move. Okay. The air is also a medium like the water. It's just less dense, but those air molecules are real. We just can't see them. And when you get up into the edge of space, the higher you go, the fewer molecules. So imagine the globe and imagine getting into a rocket ship and going up. You don't even have to go all the way to space. You go up a certain altitude and there are so few molecules of air that now as you turn and start going around the Earth, you can move at Mach 20. At speeds that are you can't even fathom if you're a fish in the water, because there are no molecules of air to create the heat or slow you down, the friction that slows you down, because the water is friction, the air is friction. We know that as reentry, and the heat shields from spacecraft coming back into the Earth's atmosphere. And so this has been demonstrated. We did this in the early 90s as President Reagan was developing Star Wars technology. We proved this out back then, and it's one of the foundations of why Elon Musk, he knew that reusability was actually something you could do, and he was going to commercialize it. We demonstrated, and so what happens is, let's go, from here, where we're at in Nashville, to Singapore, okay? It only takes about 6 or 7 minutes to get up to the place where there's almost no molecules of air. You turn, and at Mach 20, it only takes you, 10, 15 minutes to get over Singapore. And then you decelerate and come back down in 7 minutes, and you're there in less than an hour.
Wow.
You can do it, and so it's nothing more than just physics and the reality that we have the technology to have reusable rockets that go up, go across, and come back down.
And we've done this.
We've done it. Not with humans in the craft, but Elon Musk is going to do this. In fact, it's actually a number of years ago, he put out a video of what his Starship will do as a transportation vehicle. One of the fun parts of my job was connecting dots. So I had Gwen Shotwell sit down with the 4-star in charge of Transportation Command for America and talk about this, so that now, you could put 100 tons of people and equipment anywhere on the planet in less than an hour and sustain it with reusable rockets that can go and do that all day long. Think about what that means for the logistics of power projection in America, where if some country is in trouble or somebody is in trouble, you can get masses of amounts of stuff to them in reasonable amounts of time.
How was that received? How did that conversation go?
Well, it goes back to the cultural piece. People will look at something and say, sounds great, but, it's not my job, Let industry build it, and then I'll figure it out. There's a lot of fear in leaders doing things the way that things have always been done. The risk you take, the bureaucratic risk you take, is just one piece of it, where you have to actually be willing to know the law, know the regulations, and be able to operate within your authority and responsibility to innovate. But there's another thing that goes on, and I have personal experience on this, and it's this sense of belonging. I mean, we are creatures that belong to one another. We are moral creatures that belong to God, and we belong to one another. That's why we have tribes, like the tribe I grew up in, and our loyalties to our sports team, to your unit. We would live and die for our sense of belonging. And if the sense of survival were more powerful than the sense of belonging, nobody would jump on a hand grenade in a foxhole for their brothers. But they do, because they feel that sense of belonging so powerfully but I would die for you. And we do it in the military all the time. And it is a beautiful thing. And it's what God gave us, a sense of belonging. But even something good like that can be used by Satan for bad. And, but it also can be a trap. So if I'm a fighter pilot and I am in the Air Force and I say that the strategic investment is to not have a person in the cockpit of a machine that doesn't have enough gas or enough weapons to go the distance and get the job done. That we should invest in machines that don't have a human being in it, connected with sufficient awareness so that a human being can make the decision, if it's a moral decision. And now I have been ostracized from the entire tribe I belong to of fighter pilots that are celebrating the heritage of scarf around their neck, But it happens all the time in World War II, the beginning of World War II. It's a great story in a book called Fast Tanks and Heavy Bombers, which is the oxymoron title. But it describes why we don't innovate, and the cultural reasons why we don't innovate. Back to one of your central questions, the horse on the battlefield was the key element of rapid maneuver before World War II, even though people like Churchill and others had been screaming for mechanization for years. It was very slow in coming, and it was a little trickle of money, not big money like the Germans did for Blitzkrieg. And so as they studied, and so every Army officer was required to have equestrian lessons. You had to know how to manage horses and deal with horses in the military, because that was the big thing. And when the question was asked, how are you going to beat the tanks of Blitzkrieg? They did the studies, and one of my favorite studies that shows how hard it is for us to change and how hard it is to give up our tribal allegiances to the way we've always done it, on the horseback as a soldier, or in a cockpit of a fighter aircraft as a fighter pilot, or on the deck of a battleship as a Navy captain. We can be so biased and so stuck in a mindset. We can make any study say anything we want, really, if we're that biased and that deceptive. So the report that's one of my favorites that is chronicled in this book is the report that basically came back, and all the psychologists and all the experts said, if you take the horse off the battlefield, the IQ of the soldier will plummet. That the horse is essential, and it should be our main strategic effort to beat mechanization. And it went further to say the way we solve it is we put the horses in trailers and carry them to the front line, and then they will be fresh, and they will be able to outmaneuver the tanks and kill them from behind. And they used evidence like the tank can't get through trees, or it can't get over tough mountains, and the horse can. So there's always evidence that can confirm your bias. But General Marshall was smart enough and had the power of the presidency and FDR behind him, where when General Herr, the H-E-R-R, the two-star in charge of the cavalry at the time, presented this report that said the way to win against Blitzkrieg is to have a better horse, and more stuff on the horse, and using the horse in a better way, incremental innovation. General Marshall essentially started investing more heavily in mechanization. But even the mechanization was tough. They turned to Knudsen, who was the most brilliant industrialist of the age, working with Ford and Chrysler and some of the big mechanization. He was just brilliant man. And he went to the Army. He was hired to help us mechanize. He went to the Army and said, what do you need? And the Army didn't know. That's how stuck we can get in the tribalism and the heritage. So how would it feel for you to be ostracized from all the people that you feel a belonging to? It's very lonely, and in fact, it is devastating. But this is what innovators put up with. I mean, they say it's lonely at the top. It's a component of that, but innovation also has that. It is you are ostracized from those. How dare you? You are a traitor to the fighter pilot community if you don't think a fighter aircraft is the solution.
And you're dealing with that. I mean, I've dealt with it probably on a much smaller scale. I mean, when I started this, I got a lot of hate,
Yeah.
and it did feel very alone. And then as it grew, it all came back together.
Yeah.
But maybe not for the right reasons, you know. But I mean, it's people's wants and desires, and
Sure.
what I can bring them just through
Yeah.
the creation of what me and my team built here. But so you're. I mean, I got to tell one thing that I've noticed about innovators, people like yourself. You guys all know your history. I mean, just what you just spouted off right there about World War II and you, Eric Prince, Palmer, all these guys. You guys, I don't know where you get it all from, but it's you learn from history,
You do.
and so kudos to you.
Well, you're doing the same thing, but it goes back to there's nothing new under the sun, and everything is rooted in human nature. So if you understand human nature and culture and history and the lessons that have happened, as long as the history is true, that's another thing you have to work for. You can navigate a better future, but it requires this intellectual curiosity and aggressive learning, where you actually put in the time to study your history, and you triangulate truth with that too. You read history books written from different people in different perches around the world, different cultures around the world, to try to get after the bias that is written by the victors. Because the victors always write it, making themselves look like they are the heroes of the world, when in reality they may not have been totally. Mm-hmm. And you have to be honest with yourself about not wanting to be the hero of the story. Truth is the hero of the story.
I mean, I'm just curious, how are you dealing with that? With what we just talked about. I mean, these are some pretty outlandish claims in your speech. I mean, and then I looked into your background, and we were like, no, like this guy is 100% legit. But they are some outlandish claims that just go right over the top of people's heads.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, how do you deal with that, with everything that you're doing?
The first thing is to, be humble enough to anchor yourself in the fact that the only person that matters is God. And if you don't have that, if you aren't grounded in the fact that you are moral, ethical, legal, honest, and God is your judge, and you can't lie to God, you can't deceive God, and then you surround yourself with people that keep you honest and keep you humble, where it's not about you, okay? It's about God's will. It's about glorifying God, ultimately. That's that moral center, where our worldview is that there is a God, and that God loves us, and he asks us to love one another as much as he loves us. So if you have that as a grounding, you can weather all of this stuff. When I was at the senior level of command and supporting the Space Force as an astronautical engineer, and through my whole life watching this technology emerge and able to see the consequences of what this was going to mean for the art of peace, to have strength to prevail for American interests as the economy of space starts emerging, and then being considered a traitor, because what is a fighter pilot doing talking about space? And the Air Force did not, just like the Army did not want an independent Air Force, for the same reasons why the Air Force did not want a Space Force. And so, I was not welcome, and that's okay. That is the cost of innovation. And if you're not grounded in God, and the look at Job in the Bible, even his family and his friends abandoned him, and all he had was God. And oftentimes Job was like, why are you doing this, God? And it was, he couldn't see this, but it was because an entire generation that was going to come after Job could see that as long as you cling to God, you can weather anything. You cannot torture me. You cannot torture you cannot do anything to me. You can never steal away my sense of value and worth for God. And I do this though, I could just shut up and be quiet and go along to get along, or just not be a part of the fray. But I truly believe that if the spirit of fighting for God's will is in us, God will usher in a new age. He will forgive us, and he will, because God wants more people going to heaven. And if we are so corrupt as a human race that the game is up, then God will come home again and it'll be over. Okay. But if we can usher in a better future, the golden age, and I believe it's biblical, I think it's prophetic, more people will be in heaven, because more people will be born and will be prosperous, healthy, and secure. And we have the creativity. God has given us the brains to create our future, to build it. We don't have to be victims of other people building it. And this Constitution that America has is the best hope of humanity. And with my relationships across the globe, from my time in the military and the foreign countries that I became friends with, and my cultural understanding, having been raised in a different country, all the other countries of the world are just looking at America going, I hope President Trump succeeds, because if he doesn't succeed, we're all screwed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have a tremendous amount of respect for you just saying that. And that's everybody here is grounded in truth and God. And we all just consider this a conduit.
Yeah.
And that's it. But